Our next conversation today is with Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, and today, July 17th, marks the halfway mark of your term in office, 2 years.
It does. It does. It's kind of anniversary day, apparently.
Does it feel like it's been 2 years?
It does not. It feels like it's been about 6 months.
It feels like the campaign was a short time ago.
It does. It feels like it goes very fast.
A lot's happened. We got 30 minutes, so let's try to get to some of this. How about your assessment of your first 2 years? What do you measure as your successes, and where do you think you've come up short?
Yeah, I think the successes we're really proud of are, 2 years ago we were announcing this bold effort on homelessness. Incredibly proud of where that is so far. Work's not done, but if we could have said 2 years ago we'd be almost halfway to eliminating street homelessness, that was our big goal. So to be 45% reduction in street homelessness, huge success for us. Largest city ever to end street homelessness for veterans. Very proud of that. There are no encampments anymore in the city. There are no tents in downtown. I mean, those are things that seemed like they were going to be part of life forever 2 years ago. So that one, very proud of. Public safety, very proud of. Obviously, largest drop in the homicide rate of any top 100 city in the country last year. That's great progress for us. More to do. Those two, I think, are both really big wins that we're not done with, but feel like we're making great progress. I think the thing I probably would most want back is our housing ballot measure from last year. I think it was the right thing to do, right time, right scale. I think I didn't communicate the ideas in the right way, and that's why we lost. I think what was the closest election in the last 5 or 10 years in Denver is only a couple thousand votes. So that's one I don't at all regret that we did. I just wish that I did better. And I think in that moment, there was so much conversation about migrants and homelessness that it felt like an extension of that conversation. So I think people perceived it to be more housing for homelessness or migrants, and that was decidedly not. The purpose was to address those working Denverites that were struggling that weren't covered by those services, and I didn't do a good enough job on making that case.
In a minute, we're going to talk about whether you want another bite at that. Let's talk broadly about the city's financial picture right now. Denver's facing a $250 million budget gap this year and next year. Your administration spent about $80 million on the migrant crisis, about $150 million on your homelessness initiative. Given the city's current financial position, do you wish you had any of those dollars back?
I wish that I had the federal dollars back that they promised us on immigration that we spent pending their reimbursement. I definitely wish we had those back. I wouldn't take back any of the dollars we spent on homelessness. I think when you look at the results that we've had on that investment, it's historic. If I could say to you, we're going to be spending less next year than we spent when we first started on homelessness, and we've dropped the homeless rate more than any other city in American history, that's a win. So I think that investment's working. We'll keep doing it. We want to find ways to make it better. I think on the migrant crisis, we certainly didn't ask for it, didn't go looking for it. That was not on our priority list, but we also didn't want to see people freeze to death on the streets of the city. So that was a humanitarian crisis. We had to step in. I wish the federal government had come through on their promise to reimburse us, but I wouldn't change our response.
Because, your critics, especially those on the right, many of whom don't live in the city of Denver, but care about Denver, right? Draw a straight line between your spending on migrants and your spending on homelessness and the city's current financial position. Why isn't it fair to draw that straight line?
Yeah, I think because the facts just don't bear that out. The reality is, we're going to spend net about $3 or $4 million less on homelessness and migrants combined this year than we did 2 years ago. Or like maybe $3 or $4 million more. It's delta almost no change because we've dropped migrant funding dramatically. We've dropped homeless funding dramatically. But we made some one-time investments in things like buying the housing units we needed for homelessness. That is what is making this system work. If you want to look at a direct line of what's happening on the budget crisis, it is that every year in the last 15 years, the city has averaged about a 5% increase in sales tax revenue every year. This year in 2025, that increase is at near zero. It's at 0.3%. And so what's happened is with the global trade wars and economic recession fears and the uncertainty of the president, people are afraid to buy a new refrigerator or go out to dinner or go on vacation. And that is why our sales tax revenues are flat. And when you have a growing government and flat revenues, that math doesn't work. And so we'll make the hard decisions like any business or family does. If you got less money coming in, you got to find a way to make the budget balance.
Do you draw a line between the drop in sales tax revenues and whether or not people feel safe and comfortable and want to spend money in Denver?
We don't, because we're actually, we of course hold ourselves accountable for making sure people do want to feel safe and spend money in Denver. But what we saw is that's not linked right now to any trends in terms of crime or homelessness in Denver. All of our trends are heading in the right direction. We saw this behavior change come about 4 or 5 months before the election last year, and it just stayed. And we projected we would halve the growth rate. We didn't expect it would drop to zero. But you saw people get uncertain about economic future, and you see that in stable data all across the country. Consumer confidence nationwide is as low as it was in March of 2020. That's not a Colorado phenomenon.
Let's talk about your homelessness initiative.
Yes, sir.
It's It's undeniable the way that it's transformed the city. You do not see the encampments that you used to see all over the city. So the question is, are you solving homelessness, or are you just hiding it out of public sight?
We are solving it, and we have not solved it yet. So I think there are two stages. I also want to speak to the folks who say, and they say this to me regularly, okay, Mike, that's great that it's down 50%. Why do I still see 4 guys wandering down Colfax every day I drive to work? That is true. What we don't have now is encampments of 50 people in tents anymore, and open air drug markets, or human trafficking. What we do have are the folks remaining that are the most serious addicts and folks with mental illness who are not even sleeping on a tent or on a cardboard box. They're just using until they pass out. And so our next phase of the effort is really focused on those people, and that strategy is different than the last one. But no, I think for us, what we see is we're getting folks off the street into transitional housing, these all-in sites, and we know they stabilize there. We have fewer overdose deaths. We have much easier for us to provide services. Our big next step is getting them out into permanent housing where they can pay their own rent. There, they face the same challenge in Denver that the nurses or teachers or waiters in this city face, which is it's very hard to find apartments that are affordable. And so that is still a challenge, but that's now the bottleneck, not having a place for people to go to get off the streets.
There's real concern on City Council about Salvation Army and how they're managing the shelters. But part of the concern is that the city doesn't have a good alternative to the Salvation Army. Do you think that the city should look for or stand up an alternative to the Salvation Army, or do you have faith in their work?
We think there are places where they're doing a great job, and there are places where we want to see them do a better job. And we do want a more robust marketplace of great providers who are fighting to do this work. How
do you get there? How do you get to that? How do you create that marketplace?
Yeah, we're trying to do that now. There will be a new RFP for any organization to compete to provide these services. Salvation Army can compete again. New entrants can compete. We're looking at 2 options. One are small local nonprofits who haven't managed an effort of this scale before but could grow into it with support, or organizations that have managed programs like this successfully in other cities and will want to move to Denver. We're interested in both, but I think we'll open the doors and see who comes in. But yeah, we want and will have very high standards for outcomes. And for now, that's not just can you bring someone indoors and keep them safe, it's can you get them into a housing unit, can you get them into mental health and addiction treatment? Are we helping make that progress? That's what matters the most to us.
Denver welcomed about 40,000 migrants peaking in 2023. At one point, you said that Denver had welcomed more newcomers per capita than any other inland city, a non-border city in the U.S. And you had said at one point that Denver just could not handle another surge like the one that we saw. Does President Donald Trump deserve credit for drastically reducing the border crossings and preventing another surge in Denver?
No, and it's one of the great, I think, misunderstandings in American life. This crisis was over in Denver a year ago. It was over summer of 2024. And I say we went and pushed the president and the White House to try to get a change on this. If you remember, they supported us in trying to push for bipartisan legislation. Despite very Republican senators supporting it, Trump came in and asked them to kill it, so they did. So the deal that we had collapsed. And then we pushed them to take efforts to help close the border, which the Biden-Harris administration did in June. We hadn't seen a bus come to Denver in more than a year. So this crisis was over for us 6 months before Trump became president. Biden and Harris didn't take credit for that. I pushed them to do that, but that was their own choice. But for us, we'd already closed all the shelters. We'd already cut funding by 90%. We'd already put people to work. This crisis was over for us by last summer. I think the president just came in and took credit, but there has been no change in influx for us since July of 24.
Have you and your team game planned for a scenario like we saw in Los Angeles, where the president sends in the military as a show of force? You got officers marching on horses through public parks. You got Marines around federal buildings. Have you planned for whether that could happen in Denver?
We have. And actually, Kyle, I'd say one of the B-side successes I'm most proud of that probably no one notices, is sometimes the best success are the ones that no one hears about, is the way our police department has handled the protests over the last 2 years. We've had a protest almost every single week that I've been in office. You think about the October 7th protests for a year around that, plus all the Trump protests. We didn't have a single arrest until I think the protest 2 weeks ago that followed the LA protests. So we found a way for folks to be heard, have their First Amendment rights protected, and have everyone in the city be safe and not have to have police involvement. And that's been a huge success for us. So the way we stay out of being LA is we have, I think, a incredibly well-trained safety team that protects people to protest and doesn't have to create chaos, but you don't have people lighting police cars on fire in the city. We both don't tolerate that, but we really work hard with the groups who want to protest peacefully to make sure they can do it.
It's interesting, with the protests, my measure is always, does anybody find trouble who isn't looking for trouble? Like there's always a group that's looking for trouble and they find it, and you know what, they've probably had the night that they wanted, but like are other people who don't want trouble finding it? And we haven't seen that.
We haven't.
We've not seen
that's
that
why I'm
yet
delighted that I have
in
grandmothers calling and saying, I want to bring my 8-year-old daughter, should I come down to the protest? And I say, absolutely do. It's built for you.
Yeah. Let's talk about how Denver is going to deal with the budget deficit.
Yes.
How much of the $250 million do you think you will be able to make up through the layoffs that the city is planning?
As you said earlier, to break out, the $50 million is a solution for this year's 2025 budget. That's just what happened, even though we planned for less revenue. The collapse meant that's this year's solution. That's what we're solving in part through layoffs and hiring freeze. I'm sorry, through furloughs and hiring freezes as one-time solutions. In 2026, we're now having to redesign the entire budget. That's the $200 million number. What we're really trying to do there is make layoffs the absolute last option in any of those scenarios. So I'm sitting down with every single one of our 27 cabinet heads and saying, what does your department do that is the most core public service we can't step back on? And what are the other things we do that might have been nice to have in big growth years but don't have to have now? And how can we adjust those services so we can deliver government that works better but that costs less? And for us, it's maybe not always trying to keep doing more and do it better, but actually to do less and do it better. And that's what we're trying to do, and we're at every turn finding a way to make sure we can protect city employees, and I think we'll do the best possible job we can.
But what's the number? Because here's my question. How much of the fix is going to fall on the backs of city employees?
Yeah, so right now we won't know the final number until we have all 27 budgets balanced, because if one budget doesn't balance, the other 26 don't balance either. So we are working through each of those. We'll know by end of August, kind of mid-September when the budget comes out. What I can tell you is in every one of those conversations, the goal is to make sure that we do everything possible to make sure it isn't balanced on a city employee. But we also know that in a city that's 80% of our dollars are people, it's impossible sometimes to not do that, but we're doing everything we can to avoid it.
I'll ask you one last time because I know people really care about this. What feels like a fair ratio? Because obviously, people expenses cost a lot of money, right? It costs a lot of money to have people to deliver the services. If that's 80% of your costs, roughly what percentage do you think that needs to be in terms of your savings?
I want it to be far less than 80% of our savings. I think we want to vastly overrepresent services and supplies cuts rather than people. And so it will be a far lower percentage of the cuts than it is of the budget.
When you were running for mayor, I asked you if you thought that Denver needed to raise revenue or needed to live within the revenue it has. And you told me that you think the city needed to live within the revenue that it had, as you alluded to earlier. You then went to voters, asked them for more revenue, and they said no. Where do you stand now, 2 years in? Does Denver need to bring in new revenue, and should that be new taxes?
Yeah, right now, one of the things I think the voters said was that they wanted us to live within the revenue that we had. And so that's what we've committed to trying to do right now. In fact, all of our housing strategies this year are focused on, they said, build the housing you can with the money you have. So that's what we're doing. We just launched a few weeks ago a big middle income housing project focused on building more units that are affordable to working families without new taxes. It's a property tax rebate for developers who build affordable housing. That's a big new idea. We're still working on ways that we can help improve the permitting process so building goes much faster, so it's easier to build. We'll use our Prop 123 funds. So we're right now trying to flex every single dollar we can find and every non-tax increase dollar we have available to see if we can fill the total need. If we can fill the need that way, we won't need to go back. If we can't, then we got to ask the question of, is it more important to try to fill the entire need and go back to voters and ask them, or is it okay to say we'll still have 20 or 30,000 Denverites who can't afford to live here, but we're going to try to find every way we can around having to do that.
Let me check where we are on time. All right, I'm going to move along a little bit faster because I got some good questions at the end.
I should talk for a long time then to avoid those hard questions.
No. I won't let you stall. Let's talk public safety.
Yes.
So we know violent crime in Denver is dropping.
Yes.
But you're still having a hard time convincing people to come down, especially to downtown Denver. And right, that's influenced by a lot of things. There's memories of the pandemic era crime surge. There's the way that local media fixates on crime. There's also the thing that's happening now in conservative culture, where conservatives are trying to convince other conservatives that cities are scary and that you shouldn't go to them. All those things being what they are, how do you break through that and convince people to come back to downtown Denver?
Yeah, it's a couple things. One, we still think facts matter. So yes, the fact that the murder rate is down 58% in Denver, that's the biggest drop of any city in the country. We're going to keep saying that over and over because it's important to know that. The second is respond to people's concerns. This is why we created this dedicated downtown Denver police unit. So now we have 10 officers on foot, we have 10 officers on motorcycles, 10 officers on bikes, we have officers on horses. We've really surged capacity. I walk 16th Street a lot. I can't make it 2 blocks without seeing an officer of some sort. So we've done that. And the third really is moments of joy. Like we will have to create incentives to lure you back down, right? The Fisher concert we had outdoors on 16th Street. First time my 16-year-old son has begged me to come to 16th Street. That was a success for us. We'll keep doing those things, Outside Fest, a lot of those, that invite people back because we do think those moments give you a new memory of Denver. Because a lot of folks will say to me, I don't come downtown. I say, when did you come the last time? And they'll say 2020. And I say, okay. You got to give us another chance.
You get why they don't have a good memory.
I get why they don't have it. I remember that too. I was working downtown every day then. It wasn't a good memory. So we got to make new ones, and that's what we're working on. You know, we had 2,300 people at Sunset Cinema downtown this week. It was amazing. So we want more of those, and that word will spread.
Another quick question on public safety. You asked City Council to pause on a new contract for the flock cameras, the license plate reading cameras, over concerns that the Trump administration and ICE could commandeer those cameras for immigration enforcement. We've reported on how ICE got a backdoor into the system up in Loveland through their police department and the ATF. Are you confident that Denver can establish a way to keep ICE out of that system, but allow you to continue to use it for crime fighting?
Yes, I'm 100% confident. And as you said, that's what we want. We know Denverites want, if your car gets stolen, for us to be able to track it. If heaven forbid you have your kid in the back of a car and it gets stolen, you want us to be able to know right away where that car is. That's critically important. We have to keep those cameras up. And I'm 100% confident we can do that in a way that keeps ICE out, and we've already done that. We've now made the changes so that no one outside of Colorado can access the database. It's shared within Colorado. And within Colorado, if you want to access it, you got to tell us exactly what criminal charge you're looking for. And if you lie on that, we can prosecute you and put you in jail. And so I think we believe there's a way to do both, to both get public safety here and protect people's privacy. And reminders, these are all only photos of a license plate. It's never a photo of a person or a face or an identity. It's just license plates, which I think matters.
You're trying to get an $800 million bond on the ballot in November, a bunch of projects around the city. The reaction from City Council has been pretty brutal. They feel like your administration didn't listen to their priorities and is rushing this thing. Do you think there's a chance that it doesn't get finalized in August and it doesn't go up before voters this year?
No, I'm very confident that it's going to, that we're going to be able to get it done. I've been talking to city council members every day, working with them. They're all thoughtful, reasonable people who want to support projects in their district. We got 7,000 Denverites who gave feedback on this, and we only have about 50 projects at the end. So there's no way possible. We have $6 billion of requests. There's no way an $800 million bond will meet all of those. So none of us, myself included, was going to get all the things we wanted. Council members understand that. So we're in the moment now where we're trying to figure out what their top priorities are. We've cut some items off the list to give them more space to add priorities on that they care about. We're working hard to add those back. We'll release some of that list today. So this is how the process works. As we work back and forth together, they're collaborative, thoughtful people. I think we'll figure it out.
It seems to me that the concerns about the bond process speak to a larger criticism that I've heard about your administration, in that people say you've got lots of ideas, you've got lots of energy, but you're often moving fast and not listening, and mistakes are happening or people are bothered by the process. Is there any truth to that criticism?
I certainly believe that there are big problems that require us to move fast, and we will keep moving fast. I never had someone on the campaign trail say, you know what I want, Mike, is just a government that works slower. Like, I just love it. If you could, let's drop the murder rate, but not too quickly. Like, let's take our time on this. And so I think these are all crises that deserve urgency, and so we respond with urgency. And I think the results do speak for themselves on those things. I think the fact that we have the largest drop in the homicide rate, the largest drop in the homeless rate, like those things are working. But the way, as an entrepreneur, the way things work are not that you spend 24 months with the Blue Ribbon Commission building the perfect idea. You have a pretty good idea, you start with it, and then you improve it as it goes. That's what happened with the bond. We had a committee, by the way, that made these proposals. Big public process, largest public engagement. They make recommendations to us, then we improve them. We make recommendations to council, they improve them. That's how the process is supposed to work. But the worst thing we could do is stand still.
I have two more questions for you. When you were running for mayor, you were the only candidate in that field of 735. I think there are like 24, but you were the only candidate in the field running for mayor who told me that you were open to public funding of a new Broncos stadium. You said you wanted to go up for a vote. Do you still feel that way?
I don't think we are going to need public funding to build a Broncos stadium. I think that we would expect if the new stadium is built that the Broncos would pay to build the stadium itself in the same way that the stadium that's going to be built for the women's soccer franchise will be built by the ownership group. We've been in long conversations with the Broncos group. I think their owners are great people who are deeply committed to the city and to the state. I think we'll find a solution that's going to be a real win-win. I'm very excited about it.
Do you think this talk about the team moving to Lone Tree or Aurora is a bluff, or do you think they're serious about doing that if you don't give them what they want?
Oh, I think any responsible business person has to look for the best options, and so I'm sure that they are looking in serious ways. I also think they understand the history of this franchise in this city, and I think they take that seriously. And so I think that, sometimes people think new owners don't get what it means to be a Broncos fan or to be a Denver resident. I think these folks get it, and they understand how critical it is to the city, and I've appreciated that.
So I take it from the fact that you also referenced the NWSL stadium, the women's soccer stadium, is that you see the role for taxpayer buy-in or taxpayer money in the surrounding amenities of the stadium and the infrastructure, that the public pays into that and the rich people who own the teams pay for the stadium itself.
Yeah, we need to make sure there's a road that goes into wherever you get to the stadium, where there's a sidewalk you can walk on that's accessible to folks that use wheelchairs. I mean, there are things that obviously are public commitments we have to meet, but we think the ownership groups are the ones that have a vision to build stadiums, and they can do that, and we want to help them do that. And our job is to make sure folks can get in and out.
Save the best question for last. Governor Polis wants to build a pedestrian bridge, like right over there. Yes. He wanted it to go from the front lawn of the state capitol over to Civic Center Park, which is city land, but very quietly the city told him no, so he's pulled it back to just Lincoln Veterans Memorial Park. This is still going to be a really prominent new landmark in the center of the city. Do you want it there?
Well, I have the benefit of I've just spent the last 6 months asking every Denverite what they want to build in the city. So I know he's taking a survey now to ask people for feedback.
How many of them said a big bridge on the front lawn of the state capitol?
I don't have any of those yet, but I do have 7,000 folks who have pushed for things I think the governor would love. I mean, one of the things that we don't have on the bond, we would love to have on the bond, is Governor's Park, which is literally the park in the backyard of the governor's mansion. Needs a massive renovation. That could be an incredible legacy project. We have, this 5280 trail idea, which could be a Colorado trail that tells the story. I love about the governor's idea, the telling the story of Colorado over the generations in a way that's accessible to people. I think there are lots of ways he could do that. There could be trails, could be parks, could be other items. And so I'll see how his survey comes out, but I got a bunch of other ideas he could use if he wants them.
It sounds to me like you don't love the bridge idea.
I think that there are, when I look at what our residents are asking for, there are certainly other things they would pick above that. Because I've spent the last 5 months taking a lot of feedback, so I know I have ideas and I have what people tell me are their priorities, and so I got a lot of priorities for needs that I think match his vision that could still operate in the city, so I'm more than happy to work on finding a win-win.
All right, Mayor Johnston, thanks for sitting down for your annual performance review.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate your time. Yep.
Good to see
you. Thanks.